Today we're doing Reptilia by The Strokes. What a tune, possibly the best guitar solo in the history of indie music. So the song really only has two parts. It's got the verse section and the chorus section, and it goes verse, chorus, finish. So the opening is a B minor going to an E major. And they do this thing where opens quiet and then turns the volume up. You've got the bass hammering on this B note on 8 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's a real Strokesy thing. They love 8th notes. And then the guitar comes in with these downstrokes. Another very Strokesy thing is to do downstrokes. It has a lot of attack. Normally, when you go from a B minor, so that's the one chord, that's the first chord in the key, it's the home chord, and then it goes to the fourth chord in the key, and normally the fourth chord would be an E minor, but they go to an E major. The fact that it's an E major means we're in the Dorian mode, and it's this sort of halfway between a minor key and a major key. So even though it starts in this minor way, this major fourth chord, which is the E major, just gives it a brightness and a sort of, just an interesting flavour. Like, there's not many garage rock bands out there who use modal keys. And then the riff underneath, we're here on the 7th fret on the G, and we've got 3 hits, and then 9, 7 on the D. And that's on the A string. We're doing 11, same rhythm, 3 notes on the 11, 14, 17. So it's 11, 14, 17. But how they play it, at least on the video, so you can see how Nick Valensi's doing it. He's using his index finger to get this B on the low E string at the 7th fret. And he's laying his finger across the A and the D to mute those. And then he's using his middle finger here on the 7th fret on the G to do the riff. So it sort of fills the sound out, and if you're playing the riff on your own, it sort of helps fill out the chords. Because sometimes in the riff, they're playing it like this. On the recording, it does sound cleaner like that, but when the whole band's in together, I think he fills it out by putting in this low note, and then when he's up here, he lets the open E ring out and doing the, just fills out the sound. So that's it for the opening riff. Different instruments drop in and out, so you can listen to how the bass just holds it down. There's a point where it's just the riff on its own, and the instruments build back up. And then you get the breakdown before the chorus. Now the chords there, it's going from the B minor to an F sharp minor, to a G, to an A, G, A, F sharp minor, B minor. But he's not playing it here, he's playing up this shape here. So again, you need to mute strings. And then we've got our index finger here on the 14th on the A. And I use my ring finger up here on the 15th fret of the B string. And then the strings in between, I'm muting those two with this index finger. So you just hear that. So it's just the root and the major third he's doing. So it's, and then down that same shape down to the 9th fret. So you got 9 and 10. And then you move up 1 fret here on the A string to the 10th, but your ring finger moves up to the 12th. That's the major third of this G. Slide that up 2 frets to the 12 and the 14. So it's... And then the strumming, and you hear a waka after each chord. There's a... And you're just using pressure at the point where you want to do the hits. So it's... And then release. And fingers are resting over the strings to create that waka sound that you get. And at the end of the riff, there's 2 hits as well. And each time as well, there's a little slide in between, and that's part of the sound too. And then on his Strat, Hammond Jr does the first solo. So this first chorus, there's a minute-long section of just incredible guitar playing. They both essentially take turns to do solos. And Hammond Jr comes in first with this solo, which is... comes here on the 7th fret. So it's 7-7 on the E and the B, and then 10-10, but you do E, B, and then B, E. So we're going 7-7, 10-10, and then 9 on the E, and then back to the 7 on the B, 10 on the B, and then 7 on the B. So it goes. So that's the first part. And then we've got 7, 8, 7, 10, 9, 10, 12, 9. So we're going 7 on the E, 8 on the B, back to the 7 on the E, 10 on the E, 9 on the E, 10 on the B, 12 on the E, and then finally the 7 again, sorry, the 9 again on the E. And then you repeat that phrase again. And then the final phrase, we're on the B string here, we're going 7, 8, 7, 9, 10, 7 on the E, and then 7, 9 from the B to the E. So it's... As I said at the beginning, the first section is in the Dorian mode, but when you go to this, when you go to that section, that is in the natural minor scale, so it's not Dorian anymore. And then the notes that Hammond Jr is doing for his solo, that's all straight from the B minor scale. So you're switching keys essentially between these two sections. And then we've got Nick Valensi's solo. So for the second solo, we go back to the original chords from the verse, so the B minor and the E major. And as we said, that's in the Dorian mode. So all the notes that Nick Valensi's doing are straight out the B Dorian mode. And it starts like this. So I'll call out the fret numbers. We're going 9, 7, 9, 7, 9, 7, 9, 7, 6, 7, 6, and then back to the 7 on the B, and then slide up. And same again, but we end on the 9 on the D this time. And so use your ring finger here, and then with your little finger you can grab that 9 on the B again, and then it repeats. And then we've got the really tricky section. So this is probably the hardest bit in the song. I play it like this. So we're bending here from the 10. So you're finding that note that's there on the 12th, which is a B. So you're bending up to the B from the 10. And then grabbing that 7th fret on the E string. So what we're doing is we're rolling down here, 10, 9, 7, and then 9, 7, and then 7 on the D. So we're going. So you've got a bar across those 2 frets so that when you roll down and then grab that 9 on the D, back to the 7 on the B, and then 7 on the D. And then you can just build up the speed. So start slow. So what's going on there? We've got the opening bit, and then 10, 9 on the E string, and then the same part at the end of that. So the first is a bend, and then the last higher bit, we're doing a bend here at the 12th, and then back down to the 10, 9, 7 on the high E this time. And then the 10 on the B, back to the 7, and then the 9 on the B. So that final section is a bend here on the 12th, bend, bring it down, strike it again, roll down from 10, 9, 7, grab the 10 on the B, back to the 7 on the high E, and then a 9 on the B string there. So it sounds like this. And then repeat. And then it's just 10, 9, 7, and then this 9 on the B, but you're doing a pre-bend, so you're bending it up before you strike it and bring it down. Now that's, I think, the correct way to play it, but there is a slightly easier way to play it because it's very fast, this song. So when you're going, it's quite hard to shift your hand into position there, so you're going. But if that's too quick for you, you can play it here. So it's the same notes, but you're going 12, 15, 14, 12, 14 on the G string, back to the 12 on the B, and then 13 on the G. So the other tricky thing about this solo is you've got these slow bits and then a fast bit. So it's this bounce between fast and slow that just gives the solo this really cool feel. Very playful, very strokes. That's the middle section, which is the sort of extended chorus. Then we go back to another verse, which is the same. There's a bit where the rhythms so that's 2 palm mutes, and then let it ring, and then another palm mute. So it's so you just listen out for when that section comes in, so you know where to play that. And then it goes back to the chorus bit with the and Albert Hammond Jr. does his Does that once more, and that's the whole song. Please hit subscribe. Please drop me a comment if there's another stroke song you want to learn or any other kind of indie tune. I'll be glad to cover it. And thanks for watching.